Well, good morning, Avalon Church. This is our snow service. We've got some inclement weather and decided it would be best for everyone if we met online. Glad to have the capability to do that these days, and glad to be joining you in your homes. Hopefully you're staying nice and warm. We've got a normal service for you, so we're going to do some music, we're going to have some preaching, we're going to do communion, all the things that you are used to in our normal services will happen here online. So glad you are joining us. This morning we're going to be singing a song called Marvelous Light. We do not have words on the screen, so if you'd like to look it up and sing along with us and have some lyrics, you are welcome to do that. It is Marvelous Light by Charlie Hall. Let's sing it out together this morning and praise him. Into marvelous light I'm running, out of darkness, out of shame. Through the cross you are the truth, you are the life, you are the way. Fatherless, a stranger with no hope. Your kindness waken me from my sleep. Your love, it beckons deeply, a call to come and die. By grace now I will come and take this life. Take your life. Sin has lost its power, death has lost its sting. From the grave you've risen victoriously. Into marvelous light I'm running, out of darkness, out of shame. Through the cross you are the truth, you are the life, you are the way. My dead heart now, my dead heart now is beating, my deepest strains now clean. Your breath fills up my lungs, now I'm free, now I'm free. My dead heart now is beating, my deepest stains now clean. Your breath fills up my lungs, and now I'm free, now I'm free. Sin has lost its power, death has lost its sting. From the grave you've risen victoriously. Into marvelous light I'm running, out of darkness, out of shame. By the cross you are the truth, you are the light, you are the way. Into marvelous light I'm running, out of darkness, out of shame. Through the cross you are the truth, you are the life, you are the way. Lift my hands and spin around, see the light that I have found. Oh, the marvelous light, marvelous light. Lift my hands and spin around to the light that I have found. Oh, the marvelous light, marvelous light. Bring it down now. Into marvelous light I'm running, out of darkness, out of shame. By the cross you are the truth, you are the life, you are the way. Into marvelous light I'm running, by the cross and out of shame. Through the cross you are the truth, are the life, you are the way.
Spiritual seeking. We've talked about how that's a popular thing to do these days. It's popular in our culture to believe there's a spiritual side of things and to look for spiritual truth. But then we talked about last week how once we find that and we believe we found God or found spiritual truth, that doesn't seem to be as popular. And the way it usually works when people are seeking spiritual things or looking for a God is we look for some experience that will help us kind of like improve ourselves, reach some goal that we couldn't reach on our own. And what we've been discovering as we've been studying the life of a guy in the Bible named Moses is that God doesn't just roll like that. You can't use God for the experience or use him for self-improvement. We've all tried this at some point, myself included. In fact, most of us, when we start our journey with God, our faith journey with him, it starts with some crisis, some circumstance that is outside of our control. And we have to face squarely our total lack of control in the face of whatever it is that's overwhelming us. And so we got to take that somewhere, go somewhere with it, maybe a higher power of some kind, and somehow maybe make sense of what's happening through that higher power. Maybe there's a God who can help us make sense of things or try to reach the goals that we couldn't reach without him. And so we, quite frankly, start out trying to use God to help us with our problems. And like I said, it doesn't really work. And so what we're going to see today in Exodus 3 and 4 is that we could never seek God out, first of all, unless he was first calling us. But then when we find him, we never find him just to have some type of experience or to be given, some extra power that boosts our ability to be a better person. That's not what it's about. In fact, when we find God, we find an entirely new agenda for our life. We become completely reoriented to the world. It's about transformation, not just improvement. And so last week we looked at how God and Moses found one another in this remarkable way through a burning bush in Exodus chapter 3. And we're going to look at this again just for a minute to move us into where we're going in 4 today. So Moses is out as a shepherd. He's in the desert. And in verse 2, it says, "There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. And Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. And when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Now here's what most of our brains are doing right now. We're thinking, well, that's an awesome Moses moment. Of course, this is the kind of thing that would happen to someone like a Moses, a Bible guy, a guy who lived like 3,500 years ago, because he was an extraordinary leader and he did amazing things and God spoke directly to him. So this is the kind of thing that Moses would experience and as he's called, but that's not necessarily what I can look forward to in how God calls me. And while it is true that Moses had this extraordinary calling and therefore the circumstances around his calling were pretty extraordinary, our calling may not look as dramatic as that, but the pattern of God's call will always be the same. Between Moses and even you and me, there's a same pattern that God uses. And I want to show you even how this looks in another spot. You see in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul is writing to the whole church there in Corinth, and he's basically saying this. Check this out in verse 26. He says, "Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many of you were influential. Not many of you were of noble birth." He assumed that every single person in that church who was a Christian was called, or they wouldn't be Christian. Now, why did he assume that? Well, I've already said this a few times in our series. We would not seek God unless he first called us. And so Paul is referring to that reality for all of us. So all of us have a calling. It may not be as dramatic as the burning bush, but it still is in our life when the real God comes after us. It is a calling. Paul puts it pretty plainly himself in Romans chapter 3, verse 11, when he says, no one seeks God. It's God who first calls us. Now, I know you just remembered me saying that a spiritual seeker is a popular thing these days. And so how is it that no one's seeking God if it's so popular to be a spiritual seeker? Well, spiritual seeking is certainly not the same thing as seeking the real God. In fact, it can be quite the opposite. This activity that we oftentimes have when we're looking for spiritual things can be a way for us to actually run from the calling of the one true God. See, one way people seek to avoid the one true God is by searching for something counterfeit, something that's a little bit easier to deal with, or maybe even control. A designer, controllable God for our own personal needs, our own self-benefit. What we really want oftentimes is a God upgrade, not necessarily a disruption from the real God. And here's why. This is important that you hear. Our human hearts are absolutely, desperately afraid of one thing, and that is losing control, losing our sovereignty. You see, we don't have to lose control if we can somehow find or fabricate a God that fits us just right. If we can design a God that works well for how we would assume a God would be. So let me give you a couple examples of what that looks like, of a designer or controllable God. So let's just say you are a box, right? So this is you, this is your whole life, and you are seeking God, and so you are creating a space for God to fit in. Now the God you want is a God whose parameters are defined, well-defined. You know all the laws, and you know which ones are most important for you to follow so that you can make sure that you and this designer God fit well. So this God actually works with the way you have been looking for a God, and his rules fit your idea of what is right and wrong, good and bad. And so as long as you can do these rules that God has for you, then this moral law, God of law, is going to be a perfect fit for you to carry around in your own life. Now, another example of a designer God is one that is a little bit more squishy, if you will, okay? So this God doesn't necessarily fit into maybe your idea of a God, but that's okay because this God doesn't really require much out of you. So there's really no rules that you need to follow. There's no law that you need to worry about. This is a God who really just wants you to enjoy life as best you can and certainly isn't too demanding for you. And this God can't control you in any way. He simply demands nothing of you. And so he can work well, even though it may not fit into what a God would normally look like, but he'll work well for you to be able to put in your life and carry around as part of your life. Your designer God who makes you a better box or person. Now, the reality is, though, with the real biblical God who's calling Moses and who calls us as well, he's neither of these in any way. In fact, God combines both the law and love, both law and grace, both truth and love in such a way that he's able to encompass both of those things completely, and he is a God who's totally beyond our control. Therefore, it's not that you carry God around with you, it's that you completely surrender to this God who actually is able to carry you. You fit within this God. He's not one that fits within your expectation, your life. You have no claims on the real biblical God. You don't move him around, he moves you around. He doesn't fit into you, you fit into what he's doing. You lose total control with the real God. And therefore, our hearts are oftentimes terrified of this God. We don't normally naturally seek him out on our own. There has to be something that God does that shakes us out of our routine, our normal life, something that wakes us up. And that, my friends, is the call. And if you remember, Moses' call from God was the burning bush. And I don't even know if you can see smoke on the screen, but this isn't like a real fire. So rest assured, we are completely safe here at Avalon. But God has the burning bush that's calling Moses into him and his purposes. And for you and me, it may not be that dramatic, right? It could be a lot of different things. The calling can come mildly or it can come severely. It can be a sickness. It can even come through a sermon, believe it or not, that you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. It can come from a group of people who may not operate the way that you think, but yet it's through your experience with that group of people or that friend of yours that you realize there's something bigger than you because you can see how they found that God. And so from that experience, you're able to realize God's calling you. This is how it oftentimes works when God calls us into himself. Now, I can't tell you how it will work for you specifically, but my guess is you'll know when it happens, when you are called by God. And for most of you, it's already happened several times in your life, where you're just going with the flow, with your routine, and suddenly something comes along that just doesn't make sense, doesn't compute, disrupts you in one way or another, causes you to rethink everything. And this is how you know that you have the call from God. You suddenly realize in one way or another that there is a God in this situation whom I cannot trifle with. There's a God here that I have to take my sandals off in his presence and surrender to him. See, instead of this presence being some therapeutic activity towards self-improvement, you realize that you're facing a fire that is beautiful and terrifying all at once. And there's no question in your mind that this God is the God who's real and he's all that matters. Has this happened to you yet? If so, then today's sermon is really about what comes next. Yes, you've heard me correctly. That was the introduction. But the good news is that the intro was actually the longest part of the sermon. There's two big points to this sermon, and here's the first one that I want you to remember. Number one, once you meet the real God, pay attention to the purpose that he gives you and then do it. That's where we left Moses off last week, right? Once Moses and God found each other, Moses' purpose was made clear. If you remember, God says to him directly, I've indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So now go. I'm sending you to the Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And then Moses responds to all of this in this very surprising way now in chapter 4, verse 10. It says, Moses' response to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. So Moses has this excuse, as if the God who just spoke through tongues of fire can't speak through the tongue of this guy. And he presents that excuse to God, and here's God's response. Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. Once you get to know God, he says, go, right? You see it there in verse 12? Hey, Moses, you're not living for yourself anymore. I'm not just here to make you a better shepherd or a better public speaker or any of these types of things. I'm not this tame, controllable God here to comfort you into uselessness. I have a purpose for you that is very important for you to fulfill, and I want you to go and fulfill it. Now, if you know the real God, his cause, his truth, his people become more important than just your safety or your plan for the future. He's more important than your comfort, your bank account, your reputation. You live for this God's glory before your own. That's the transformation that happens. It takes you from the inside out and makes you a completely different person. And what's the most astonishingly ironic part about all of this is that this is exactly what we need to be our best self. So going after the God who makes us a better person, we find the real God whose main concern is us glorifying him. And through that, we actually discover what every spiritual seeker has been looking for all along, our best selves. Here's my second point. The only way that you're going to be fulfilled, to be your best self, is for you to fulfill God's calling for you, what he has created you to do. So go. God is calling you. You wouldn't be hearing the sound of my voice if it wasn't for God's work in your life in such a way to put you in the circumstance, to call you out. That's why you're here. And God will continue to say to you, get out of yourself. It'll be a relief, actually, to stop thinking so much about yourself and your own needs. Lose yourself in me to find yourself. Lose yourself in my service, and you'll find who you really are. So, what happens to Moses? Does he get it immediately? Does he get fired up and see all this stuff that's happening and God calling him and telling him about this mission that he wants to put him on? Well, we already saw, not really. In verse 13, he actually says this, pardon your servant, please send someone else. These are immortal words because they're spoken far too often by too many people. Moses has heard and acknowledged God's call to himself when he said, Moses, Moses, and Moses approached God in that burning bush. He's approached God and he's acknowledged the call in, but Moses is refusing the call out that God has given to him. And this is all familiar for us, right? It's a lot easier for us to be called into God's presence, into a place of worship, into a place where we experience the beauty of God's presence among us. What's difficult is then when he tells us to turn around and leave and go out and tell someone else about it. So Moses is feeling the same way that too many of us oftentimes feel, where we're like, okay, God, we've finally gotten used to being in your presence. Now you want us to go out. Please send someone else. And so this should probably be familiar for all of us in one way or another. And it's important that we see what God does in response to Moses' excuse making. How does God respond to Moses? Well, God says this, verse 14. The Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, what about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He's already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth, and I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. This is remarkable. Verse 16, he will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so that you can perform signs with it. Now, here's something that we all need to remember, that when God calls us out, when he sends us out, he doesn't do it in such a way that we have to feel alone. Now, when God responds to Moses' excuse, he is burning with anger, right? But also, do you notice the tremendous amount of patience that he actually has? He's mad, but he says, you know what? What if I actually make you a part of a team? A whole lot of other people that maybe can surround you. Like Aaron can go with you, and he can be your mouthpiece. And you can work together with him, and I will work through both of you to see that my will is done. But for you and I, we have an Aaron, we have someone else, we have someone else, we have someone else in our life. This is what the church is all about. That God surrounds us with people like he did Aaron and Moses, to help us, especially when we feel like we're overwhelmed with how God has called us out. So that's the next thing. If you have responded to God's call in, what's kept you from responding to his call out? And if it's the thing that all of us fear, that we're not going to be able to do it on our own, here's the truth that we can all accept and find hope and comfort in. It's what church is all about. You don't have to do this on your own. And in the time of isolation that we've been feeling lately, I know a lot of us have felt like we've been on our own because of all the stuff that's happening, keeping us in our houses and sickness and all that kind of stuff. But the church is still real. It's still full of people who are called out by God to do his will. And I pray that you are one of those. And I pray that you don't have the same fear, but can step out and be surrounded by his people. Welcome to the church.
This week, some have experienced success and joy. Others have experienced challenge and heartache. Some have worked hard at their day jobs. Others are searching for a job to sustain them. Some have poured into their families. Others dream of having a family. Some are starting something new. Others are finishing something old. They may not be us or look like us, but their stories are our stories, and their lives are our lives. And they remind us that we've all come from different places and situations. But there is one thing that isn't different about us. There's one area of common ground that we can't run away from. All of us, every single person gathered here today, is in desperate need of God. Whether we admit it or not, we all need God desperately. In our highs, in our lows, in our confusion and in our clarity, in our loneliness and our doubt, in our joys and in our sorrows. We're all in desperate need of God. And that's our common ground. That's our universal need. And that's why church is so beautiful. Because when a gathering of people is found at the intersection of diversity and desperation, well, you never know what God might do.
All right, well, good morning. We're going to continue to worship this morning. We'll be singing a song called Breakthrough by Red Rocks Worship. If you'd like to follow along with some lyrics online, Breakthrough by Red Rocks Worship. Let's sing it out together. I am weary from the waves crashing over every day. God of mercy, please come rescue me. I am longing for your voice, gentle whisper in the noise. Father, tell me everything's alright. Your power, your presence breaks strongholds. King of heaven, when you speak, mountains move. I believe there will be breakthrough. You alone can take my scars and piece by piece restore my heart. Take what's broken, make it whole again. Oh, your power, your presence breaks strongholds. King of heaven, when you speak, mountains move. I believe there will be breakthrough. There will be breakthrough. Shake the mountains, break the walls apart. In the heavens, Almighty God, you are overcome, defender of my heart. By your power, the oceans open wide. Your fire falls down, heaven and earth collide. King Jesus, forever by my side. Yeah. Shake the mountains, heavens open wide, your fire falls down, heaven and earth collide. King Jesus, forever by my side. Your power, your presence break strongholds. King of heaven, when you speak, mountains move. I believe there will be breakthrough. There will be breakthrough. Amen. We're going to close our songs this morning with one more called No Longer Slaves. It's by a group called Bethel Music, if you'd like to look up the words. Let's sing it out together this morning. No Longer Slaves by Bethel Music. You unravel me with a melody, and you surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. No, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Your love has called my name. I've been born again to your family. Your blood flows through my veins, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. No, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Sing that out again. No, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. No, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Sing this out. You split the sea. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and say, I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and say, I am a child Yes, I hear a shout.
Well, hey, church, we're so glad that you are able to worship with us. We're so glad you're able to hear today's message. But we, even when we're in different homes spread out across the city, still get to do something amazing together. Jesus died for each and every one of us, and we're still going to take the time this week, today, even with all the snow and us being separated, to still remember the words he said to his disciples before he went on that cross, where he broke bread and he said, this is my body broken for you. And he poured the juice and the wine and said, this is my blood shed for you. What an amazing thing that we get to remember that here today, no matter where we're at, knowing that Jesus died for each and every one of us. And so, church, in your homes today, hopefully you're able to find some bread, some juice, whatever it may be, and just take a moment just to remember that sacrifice. Take a moment just to be there with the people around you, remembering the free gift that Jesus gave to us. We're going to let you take a moment to remember Jesus died on the cross for our sins. Well, church, once again, we are so excited that you are able to join us here online. Avalon Church, nonetheless, even spread out throughout the city, we are the church. And another thing that we want to do and give you the opportunity to do here today is another form of worship, which is giving with a cheerful heart and showing that we trust God over our money, God over the finances. And there's some pretty cool stuff that Avalon Church is doing in the surrounding community to be salt and light. And so on your screen, you'll see a bunch of different ways that you can still give even when you're at home. But also, we still have the announcements of what is to come. So check out this quick video of what is to come here at Avalon Church.
Good morning, church. My name is Brittany, and this is your weekly Avalon News. Your first announcement is that Forge will be hosting a night of bowling on January 28th. All middle and high schooler students are invited to meet at the bowling alley from 6:30 to 8:30. Pizza and drinks will be provided, and you can register your kids on the Church Center app. Your second announcement is that we will be holding our annual baby dedication during the Sunday school hour on February 13th. Please join us over in the backyard as families commit to raising their children in a Christian home, surrounded by Jesus' love and grace. We would love for everyone to attend as we, the church, throw in our support and commitment as well to help these families along the way. So please join us on February 13th. Also, if you are interested in committing your child, please register on the Church Center app. Your third announcement is that all Avalonians 55 and older are encouraged to attend a Valentine's party luncheon scheduled for Wednesday, February 9th, starting at 11 a.m. Everyone is asked to bring a covered dish with an Italian theme, such as spaghetti, lasagna, breadsticks, etc. Drinks and desserts will be provided. Please register on the Church Center app if you are planning on attending. Your final announcement is that CCYC, Carolina Christian Youth Conference, is right around the corner. CCYC exists to connect students to help train to be the hands and feet of Jesus. This is an amazing opportunity for our middle school and high school students to get away and have some fun with the purpose of equipping and encouraging them in their walks. If you have any questions or have a middle or high schooler who is interested, you can register them on the Church Center app. Well, that is all the announcements that I have for you, church. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you back here next week.
Well, Avalon, as you can see, we have a lot of cool things that are coming up here at Avalon Church, and hopefully there's something for each and every one of you to get more engaged here at Avalon Church. We actually have another video for you all, something we recorded earlier this week with Chris about something cool happening in the Virginia Beach area. Take a look at this quick video as well.
Hey folks, I wanted to make you aware that we are partnering with Waypoint, a church planting organization in our area, to plant a church called Journey Church in this area, in the Virginia Beach area. Right now they're going to be meeting in the Skate House, which is a skating rink that's in the Lynn Haven area of town. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because they're working on the plant. It's officially going to launch on March 20th. But they've got a project they wanted to see if folks from area churches could help support them with, and it's coming up just this next weekend. So check out this video where you're actually able to hear James Davis, the guy who's leading the church plant, talk about what he needs for this project for next weekend.
And after this, Jesus appointed 72 others, and he sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. And they went out and they spread the good news about Jesus. And then after they had done that, the 72 returned with joy, and they began to report all that they had seen and experienced and done and accomplished. Man, what would it be like if you were one of those 72? Jesus said, hey, I got a mission for you, I got an adventure for you. I want you to go out into all the towns and the areas where I'm going to come, and I want you to spread the word and the good news. How exhilarating would that be, right? How scary would that be? How challenging would it be to step outside your comfort zone, to do something you've never done before? What an adventure. Listen, I'm not Jesus and we're not the 72, but we have a chance to go on an adventure just like that this week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, January 27, 28, 29, and 30. We have an opportunity to hit the streets and spread the good news. We're Journey Church. We're launching March 20th, and that's our grand opening, but we have some sneak peek services February 6th and March 6th, and we want to spread the word. We want to let people know, and one of the ways that we're doing that this week is by hanging 15,000 door hangers in the surrounding area of the Lynn Haven area where we're going to be meeting. And so what we want to do is we want to let people know that there's a church in their community that cares about their community. See, on one side of the door hanger, it's going to talk about our sneak peek and introduce people to who we are as a church. But on the other side of the door hanger, it's going to let people know how they can make a difference and contribute. See, we've partnered with Penn Ministry, this ministry that helps the homeless in Virginia Beach. And they said one of the biggest needs that they have is blankets right now. And this time that we're going to go blitz these neighborhoods with these door hangers is going to be a time that's really cold. It's going to be like in the 30s. So don't let that scare you. It's going to challenge you, but it's also going to let you experience a little bit of what some of the homeless in our area are facing. It's going to show you even more the need for these blankets. And so we're going to hit 15,000 homes with these door hangers and bags. On the door hangers, it's going to explain who we are as a church. It's going to explain that people can raid their closets and donate blankets, and they're going to put them in the bags. And then on Sunday, January 30th, we're going to drive these carrier routes that we just went through and collect these bags. I want to invite you to be a part of what we're doing to spread the good news, to move past your comfort zone, to do something you've never done before, to adventure with us in this venture that we have going on to spread the good news. This is going to be a great opportunity for us to pray for the people who are living in this place, in these neighborhoods, in these homes. It's going to be a great opportunity for us to pray for the forgotten about, the homeless in our area. and I want to invite you to play a part. How awesome, how amazing is it that we get to do something like this? So sign up in the forum. Let us know you're down. We'll give you all the information that you need. We'll send you out 2 by 2. And just on the other side of this, can't you just see how you'll see life change and joy and, I was part of something bigger. That's what we're inviting you to, because the journey continues.
So the way we have it set up is that you can go to our Church Center app and look for the events there, and under events you should be able to see where you can let us know that you're interested in helping out, and I'll take that information, pass it on to James, and then he'll be reaching out to you directly to find out where specifically he wants y'all to meet and what the game plan is. So thanks for your time.
Well, church, that is officially the last announcement I have for you all. Hopefully, you all have had a wonderful morning. Hopefully, you had a breakfast with the family, drank some hot chocolate, some apple cider, some coffee, whatever it may be. Hopefully, you're in your PJs having a great time as we were able to still worship online together. And as always, if you're wanting to connect with us or need prayer, you can always text the word Avalon to 94,000 and we'll get right back to you. But anyways, church, stay safe, stay warm, have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you back here next Sunday.